So we feel that once we could get to that level of maturity, that a drone can fly fully autonomously on site, no need for someone to babysit the drone, and it provides constant value, it will open up an array of options for us as a company and for other companies.
You're listening to the Drone Radio Show podcast, the show about drones and the people who use them for business, fun, and research. Hosted by Randy Goers.
Hello, everyone. This is Randy Goers, and welcome to the Drone Radio Show podcast, episode 71. Are we ready for true autonomous aerial vehicles? That's one of the questions we'll explore on today's show. Arial Avitan is the Chief Commercial Officer for Percepto, an Israeli-based company that develops hardware and software that enables drones to fly and perform tasks autonomously. Their boards use computer vision software and several sensors to give drones the ability to perform complex flight and commercial tasks in a more safe, accurate, and effective way. Arial is here to talk about Percepto, their innovative products, and the work that they're doing in creating fully autonomous drones for the commercial sector. So let's pick up the interview where I asked Arial to introduce himself.
My name is Arial Avitan, and I lead the commercial front for Percepto. That means that everything has to do with the commercial side, including sales, marketing, business development, and support, is done by me.
Tell me a little bit about Percepto. What does it do?
Well, it's funny. If you ask someone in the Valley, for example, what Percepto does, they will tell you it's the computer vision company for drones. So that's how Percepto started. It started by three co-founders that, surprise, surprise, wanted to make a drone follow them when they do snowboard, which is a very classic kind of use case when you talk about entrepreneurs trying to make drones do something. But when we started working on it, we understood two things. One, that drones cannot run real-time vision applications because the processors on the drone, the computers on the drones, are very, very weak. They're basic, so they enable the drone to just fly and no more than that. So we had to develop basically two things. One is a supercomputer that can hook up to the drone and actually enable the drone to use vision applications. And the second thing we had to develop is the actual visual applications, right? So that the drones can do different kinds of missions. So the first one would be a tracker, like basically what you see that DJI-4 has today, which is the basic tracker. But the more complex application, we had a human detection application. So that today, if you see a DJI-4, you have to show the drone what you want it to track, which is like a box. A detector will automatically detect a human, and then you have to just click on that box, and then the drone goes from detection to tracking. That's the main differences.
Before we get too much into the technology part, can we backtrack a little bit and talk about the founders of the company? Who are they and how they came up with the idea?
Sure. So three co-founders, and I'm the fourth one to join. The three co-founders are Dor Abuhatzira. He comes from a very technical background. He actually builds supercomputers for the telecommunication companies here in Israel. Second co-founder is Raviv Raz. He's a childhood friend of Dor, and he is an Air Force pilot and was building UAVs for defense industries. And then the third co-founder, called Sagi Blonder, he studied with Dor in the university, and he is silicon embedded computing kind of genius. So all three came together when Dor and Raviv started building drones for the fun of it, and their second passion is snowboarding, and that's where they came up with the idea of having a camera follow you on the slopes. Sagi is not a snowboarder, but he liked the idea of doing this kind of applications. And that's how they formed the core of Percepto.
Now, this was a few years ago before really this technology was really out in the marketplace in any of the other venues?
They started almost 30 months ago, like 2.5 years.
Okay.
They were garage stage up until a year and a bit, a year and 4 months. And then after the first seed money, they went out and started building like I said, the core hardware, the Percepto core, what we call, which is the module that I talked about, the supercomputer, and the vision applications.
They started small, and it's a Israeli-based company. Is that correct?
Yes, yes.
And then you did a IndieGoGo. Can you provide a little bit of information on that?
Sure. As you can understand, the first target market was actually consumer and not commercial. And what they did is they did an IndieGoGo campaign that talked about, a small onboard, it's called a companion computer kind of module that you can hook up into the drone and then run the applications on the drone. It was a fairly good IndieGoGo campaign. It met its goals. But then the company went to a stage where they understood that there's two main barriers for coming into the consumer world with these kinds of technology. One is a price point. To manufacture these kinds of boards and provide that software, the price point would be, another DJI, so another Phantom. So that's not relevant for the whole consumer world. And the second one is how do you make sure that the vision applications are at a certain level that a consumer needs. There's so much scenarios that you can use them. You have to make sure that it's a very robust system. And in the early stages of the company, we couldn't get to that level. And we understood that there's a conversion that needs to happen within the company from a consumer-oriented company to a commercial-oriented company.
Let's talk about the technology itself. Can you talk a little bit about what actually it does and how it works and what it enables the drones to do?
So the Percepto core, the module, is basically an enabling computer. It has an NVIDIA TK1 processor on it, GPU processor, very strong processor, takes very little electricity. It has an FPGA, which is a component that enables the module to constantly take over the flight control. So it's either connected directly into the PIC-SOC, or if it's not a PIC-SOC, it mimics the remote control, the RC. It takes over the controls and navigates autonomously based on what it sees. Now, the computer is hooked up into almost any camera or a standard camera with some capabilities that we need. And the software on the module itself is the vision algorithms and control. So the module itself can be used for many other applications, not only vision applications. It can come to use when you need onboard processing. So, for example, there are companies out there that use drones for agriculture with hyperspectral cameras, right? The problem with hyperspectral cameras is that they create a lot of data, 30 gigas, 50 gigas of data every flight. To process that and move that after the flight for analysis, that takes a lot of time. If you do the processing on board, at the end of the day, you get 2 giga, 3 giga file with the relevant information needed.
The part that I think that is really interesting about your application is that it's the open source part of it that allows users to develop their own applications with your technologies.
Exactly. So there's two modes for us to work. We work, for example, with defense companies or with companies that buy the evaluation board with an open SDK. So a lot of that very hard work that programs need to do in order to make sure that everything works on the module, including the connections to the camera, taking the camera feed, connecting to the controls and so on. It's already done with our SDK. And now they can write vision applications, which are not easy applications to write, but they can write vision applications using that base SDK that we provide for them. So that's the kind of module approach that we have for the buyers of these controls. A year ago, we made a very big decision based on the feedback that we got from clients that technology is great, but if you don't provide a solution to the industry, it's going to be very hard to exist, because this industry, while there's a lot of buzz about drones and commercial drones, every 2 weeks you get a report saying, commercial drones is going to be this and this billion every year, but you can't see that picking up because there's not a lot of companies that provide the actual full solution on site. So what Percepto did is made a transition from technology to a full on-site platform that includes three main components. One is the Percepto core, which is the heart of the drone. We developed a ground station that enables the drone to charge on site and communicate with the ground station, and then a management console that can control the drone from remote with no need for a pilot on site.
And really where all this is going, all about making drones more autonomous.
Exactly.
in terms of what your technology does. So maybe you can talk a little bit about that relationship between what you're developing and how that all relates to the whole growth of autonomy.
Well, I think that philosophy-wise, I think there's two main approaches to commercial drones. Companies like Drone Deploy, Airware, Skycatch, their approach is, I'll do a software that knows how to support manned drone services. So different kinds of software that enables you to manage the mission, have someone get a task. He goes with the drone, touches a button, the drone does what it needs to do, comes back. But the limitations of the human as the person that takes the drone, brings the drone, and so on is still there. The second approach, which is less common but taking a lot of momentum, is how can you use full autonomy to make sure that the drone can sit on site and work 24/7 for the client. And that's the approach that Percepto took. Enabling the drone to be fully autonomous and conduct multiple missions using computer vision, which is our technology edge, we would say, is the way we think the industry will adopt drones in a massive scale versus manned services. So today, when we analyze the full market for commercial, we see these two main approaches. And while we feel that the first approach is much more close to the industry in terms of revenues and so on, the on-site drone approach will be the one to open the commercial drone market. But in order for that to happen, two things need to be standing. One, the drone needs to be fully autonomous with no need for a pilot on site. And the other one is that the drone needs to conduct missions end to end. Not only GPS flights that enable the drone to get from A to B, but actually do missions that involve inspection, safety, security, so that the end client, the commercial client, will gain value from the system on site.
Can you give me an example of how that might work from a business case or an application? How would the end use of a drone work in a real life situation?
The idea is that the drone sits in a specific facility. The facility is known, so anything that has to do with no-fly zones, hazards, areas where there are large, tall objects, everything is pre-marked, and the drone knows where it needs to live and what to do. Now, the base applications would be security applications that have to do with defense. So parameter security or fence indications, the drone will know how to fly to a specific event. So, for example, if somebody touches the fence, the drone will know how to fly to that because it's linked to the management system. The management system will provide the drone with a GPS location saying, this sensor was triggered, fly there. And because the drone uses computer vision applications, it's constantly looking for either humans or cars in that area. Now, that is what I mean by a fully autonomous mission. If I would send a drone GPS to a specific location, but it won't know how to identify a human in a car, I would need to have a man in the loop in order for it to identify what the drone sees, right? Once I have vision applications that do that for me, if the drone doesn't find anything, then nothing gets triggered. If the drone does find something, then it brings the human or the operator into the loop of asking him, I found a human, do you want me to track it? Do you want me to stand still and wait and see what's going on? There's different kinds of scenarios that you can run, but you're not managing the drone per se. You're not telling it go left or right. You're telling it follow an entity or not. But that's the base level. Now, on top of that, we are adding safety applications like gas sensors, smoke sensors, applications that will enable the drone to provide early warnings on safety issues that are not related, of course, to security. And on top of that, we are adding vision applications that deal with industry missions like inspection, and monitoring. So in a solar plant, you would have an application that will look at PVs with thermal cameras to understand where you have PV deficiency. You would use a normal camera to look at shading or dust to understand what is the level of efficiency that you have currently in your site. And the end result would be a drone that works 24/7 with a day camera and a night camera. And when it's not doing security, it's conducting tasks that enable the site to be much more productive and, basically reduce costs or increase revenue for that facility.
Has your company developed a technology that can do all of that today, or is it still work that needs to be done?
The status of the company is that the Percepto core, the heart, is already done and sold to defense companies. There are a number of defense companies that the next small UAV platforms are based on our heart, which we feel is a good validation just because defense companies are very tough on their standards. The ground station is already built and operational, but it's built for pilots currently. Now we're moving to the second stage of learning from the pilots and different kinds of tests that we're doing, and we're building a ruggedized system that will enable the drone to stay in areas that are, minus 20 centigrade, plus 40, and rain, dust, snow, and so on. The drone, by the way, itself, we're drone agnostic, if you can say that, meaning I can hook up into any drone, and that gives me a lot of flexibility. I can use a DJI drone for small missions. I can use a very big drone if I need a drone that knows how to conduct inspections in very high winds and so on. I'm not married to a platform. For us, it's very good because I'm agile and the different kinds of solutions I can provide. And the drone itself is already done on our end as well. And the last component is, of course, the vision applications. So in terms of security, the security stack is done. So we have a human and car identification platform or application that works at day and night. We have a tracker, meaning if it knows how to identify a human or a car, it could track a human or a car, actively track it, again, day and night. We are now implementing the safety applications, which are gas and smoke sensors on the drone. And now we're starting to work on applications for the industry. So the first batch would be applications for gas turbine and solar plant.
Now, this technology, the autonomous and the vision sensing, is something that other companies are also pursuing. How does Percepto fit in with some of these other companies, say NVIDIA and Intel and some of the others that are larger, more established in the technology area? How do you guys fit in, and how do you create some separation and some distinction for yourself?
Good question. When you look at the market today, there's a number of categories. You mentioned, for example, NVIDIA, Intel, Qualcomm is a player there, Vidius. These guys, they're much more, let's say, competitors of their own because they actually create chips. Okay? So they would create the building block that on top of that, you will write applications that are relevant for the industry. That's why we work with NVIDIA. We use that platform, and on top of that platform, we developed our own hardware and software to enable vision applications. So these guys are much more of a partner of ours. So they create the platforms that we can use in order to create our dedicated platforms and software. There are companies like Iris Automation and Skydio, which is a very cool company, that write vision applications. But what they do is they try to address a very specific need across the drone industry. So Skydio is trying to solve the sense and avoid kind of a big question. And that is a very big question to handle. It's a full startup needs to work on that before it goes out. And we're not in that business. We want to create industry relevant applications. Our main focus today is to talk to the ExxonMobil's, Shells of the world, BP, the big companies that are currently doing manned services and for inspection, monitoring, and security, understand what of these missions can we write vision applications to replace it, and then write this so we can provide value to the industries. So it's two different plays. There are companies out there that are starting to look at this whole world because they understand that a platform alone would not provide the value for the client. But currently, we're one of the only companies that deal with this market need.
As your company perfects the system and the technology and advances more into autonomy, what will that do for the industry?
First of all, the industries will start adopting drone technology because they'll feel safer and they will feel that they're getting much more from the platform than a current use of drone services. We talk a lot with Siemens. Siemens is a very good partner of ours. One of the BU heads told me for Siemens, tactically, it's very cool for Siemens to have a drone come in and inspect a chimney. Okay? But for Siemens, the organization, it doesn't really matter for it if two people come and visually inspect the chimney by manually, or another two people come and use a drone to inspect the chimneys. For them, it's almost the same amount of money. Maybe it's an incremental change. It's a bit faster, maybe more accurate. But the real game changer would be to fully utilize a drone platform by having it work 24/7 for you and conduct different kinds of missions. So we feel that once we could get to that level of maturity, that a drone can fly fully autonomously on site, no need for someone to babysit the drone, and it provides constant value, it will open up an array of options for us as a company and for other companies. Like you said, to write new applications that addresses different kinds of markets. Percepto hopes to grow very fast, but we'll never get to all the different use cases and all the different applications needed in the market. So we'll be gladly open the SDK so other companies can take that SDK, write applications for different kinds of industries and provide that value. So I think that it will really open the hatch for the commercial drone industry in different layers, from technology to application development.
What sort of things do you think have to happen to make that a reality or to speed that up?
I think that we have to break through the commercial market. Today, there's no box on site anywhere in the world. None. Zero. There's only maybe 5 companies in the world that are addressing this. There's only 2 companies that actually have boxes. It's us and a company called Air Robotics. And we're the only one that provides fully autonomous end applications today for security and safety. So it's going to take time working with these huge companies like Shell, like Exxon, like BP, like Enel, very big companies, Siemens, GE, to have them trust the fully autonomous drones on site in conducting different kinds of missions. So it's going to be a relatively slow rollout. So we need that kind of approval. We are getting a lot of positive indications. There's no company that we talked to that didn't want to have pilot and extended pilots on site, but it's still something that needs to open up. Of course, regulation is part of that. Regulation now, we see the FAA opening up more and more every 6 months, but we still need to get to a point where the regulations will enable us to fly without line of sight. We still think we can provide value with a human on site looking at a drone that does things automatically, but still we need to go through that hurdle. I think these are the 2 main components. The third one would be the maturity of the technology and reducing the amount of errors that the drone can do. And that would be more towards making sure that the drone can do specific, very tailored solutions at the beginning and slowly adding more and more value to the platform on site.
Is there anything about the technology or about Percepto that I didn't bring up that we should talk about?
I think we covered a lot. I think Percepto is now in a stage where the solution that Percepto creates is part of an approach. And that's the big thing we want to come out with. I think that today the conversation about drones is still a lot of a buzz conversation. Everybody likes drones. It's a pretty cool platform. But when you go down to the essence, like what do you do with a drone and how can it provide value? Then we have to start talking about these 2 kinds of approaches that we talked about before. That's what Percepto wants to promote. It wants to assure that we develop a platform that will provide constant value to its clients.
It's kind of like the conversation many people had several years ago about the different smartphones, that rather than talking about all the different apps that are on the phone, the question is what are you going to do with those apps? How does it make your life any better?
I think you're 100% right. There's so many applications out there, so many form factors, right? But at the end of the day, you want to have something that makes something for you, like provides you value. That's how things get minimized. A lot of companies, we can already see in the drone world, which is pretty fast, companies closing or pivoting because they understand that while they did things that are very, very cool, very, very technology edge kind of stuff, it's not tied up to the unmet needs of the world. And we feel that there are companies that are just overkilling. They have like an amazing technology, but nobody wants it yet. There's no market for it yet. And now our job is to say, okay, what does the industry want? How can the industry adopt drones for themselves? And what do we need to do? What kind of applications do we need to create in order to have the industry take that drone and say, hey, this drone actually makes money for me. It reduces the cost and increases the value of my facility or what I do.
Well, that sounds good, Ariel. I think that last comment was a good comment, but I'll give you the opportunity if you want to make a closing comment to sort of wrap things up.
I really think that we're in an amazing time for us as a company and for the drone industry in general. Thinking about it, there's so many talk about this, but it's like being in the world of 2 or 3 companies that create cell phones, and it's not even deployed yet. The commercial drone market is so big. It has so many applications. So many families are going to be eating from this industry. It's not even funny. And it's a very exciting time for us. We hope that we get to a place where we really provide value. And based on that value, we'll be measured and grow, of course.
That's it for episode 71 of the Drone Radio Show. I hope you enjoyed hearing from Arial Avitan of Percepto and learning about their efforts to create fully autonomous drones. I want to thank Ariel for taking the time to speak with me. I found it fascinating. If you want more information on Percepto or want to connect with Ariel, check out their website at percepto.co. If you enjoyed this episode, please leave a positive review on iTunes. It really does help. And as always, I hope you'll listen to more episodes of the Drone Radio Show podcast to hear how others are using drones for business, fun, and research. For the Drone Radio Show, I'm Randy Gores.
This has been the Drone Radio Show podcast. More information on today's show can be found on our website at www.droneradioshow.com. If you're using drone technology for business, fun, or research and would like to share your experience on the show, please visit our website and fill out a guest appearance application. And don't forget to follow us on your favorite social media channels.